Good morning, Dothan Rotary Club. Thank you for being here this morning. What a great crowd. Great weather for us. Thank you, everyone standing. We'll now have the pledge of allegiance. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for invitation brought to us by Nathan Wallace.
Let's pray. We have a lot to pray for. Father, we come to you this morning humbly and thankful for your goodness to us as people of Dothan and the Wiregrass, of people of the United States of America. We thank you for our freedoms. We thank you for our prosperity. We thank you for this club and the chance to serve others. Lord, you are the one who has blessed us, and we don't take the credit for it. Help us to walk in humility and grace and service. Bless our elected officials. Thank you that we have men and women who desire to do what's best for their people and to follow you. Thank you for this food, those who prepared it. We pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
All right, I'm back, and I don't have the jokes that Terry Duffy always has, so be prepared. Doug Blankenship, birthday on March the 6th. Doug in here?
He was.
Oh, there you go. I took my glasses off so I could read, and then I can't see you in the crowd. And I want to, in case Terry's not here next week, he is 75th birthday. We had a surprise birthday party for him this Saturday. But in case he misses, he turns 75 on March the 11th. And I know it's not any fun telling people about your birthday, so I'm telling you ahead of time so you think about it in 75th. This coming on March 11th. Anniversaries. Bo Baggert and Martha on March the 2nd. And John Brown and Carrie on March the 6th. Side note, Brad Parrish's mom passed away a couple of weeks ago. So let's put him and his family in your prayers. Thank y'all and have a great day.
Yes, this is Terry.
Thank you, President Allen. We're happy to welcome our guests and visiting Rotarians today. When I call your name, if you will please stand and remain standing until all the visitors are recognized. We got quite a list today. David Money, guest of Dr. Linda Young. John Pudner, guest of the club. Larry Danford, Greg Holland, Lisa Richards, and Laney Deloney, all guests of President Allen Richards. Karen Sanders, Tim McDonald, both guests of Alex Reynolds. Shannon Smith and Landon Constable, guests of the club. Kimberly Faulkner, guest of Catherine Harrison. Ivan Lampkin, guest of the club. Mark Saliba, guest of the club. Adam Hartzog, guest of Art Morris. And finally, Brandon Shoup, member of the Tuesday Club. Will you please welcome all of our visitors today?
Thank you, Josh. Good to ask you. I'm on the team.
Oh, Fran.
1133. Would you mind taking class, please?
You promise I'm gonna give you answer.
I don't know about 37, 22, 88, 60.
That's gotta be Margaret. That's Margaret. She was right in front of me.
All right. Okay. Yes, that's good. Alan is a verification person. All right, here you go, Margaret. Oh, okay. 3 of diamonds next time.
3 of diamonds. Just one announcement, I do want to say, next week will be our March board meeting. All board members have a meeting directly after this meeting. Next week, up the field. At this point, I'd like to turn the program over to Jed Manners.
Good morning or afternoon, whatever it is we call it right now. Hope you enjoyed your meal. It looked good. My pleasure today to introduce to you Barry Moore. Barry was born and raised and resides. I guess you can say you reside in Coffee County, but most of the time you're living right now in D.C. So we're glad to have him here. I know it's hard for his schedule for us to get him here, and we're privileged and thankful to have him here today. Barry has 4 children. He has a lovely wife, Heather, who, you know, I think is pretty cool, is by his side, often supporting him in his career and being what we call an extraordinary helpmate. And Heather is that for him. He has 4 children, Jeremy and Kathleen and Claudia and Jeb, with a B, not a D. So he would love for me to tell you that because he gets called all kind of names. Jeb. He graduated from Auburn University and in Ag Science, and I'll say War Eagle anyway. Everybody who'll say War Eagle anyway, say War Eagle. Anyway. Anyway. All right, and he started a business after college, not immediately, but soon thereafter. Hopper Moore, which is an industrial hauling service, and waste hauling. He has served for a long time. He served in the Alabama National Guard Reserves. He has served as a former member of the Alabama House. He has served as a Congress as a House of Representatives for District 2. And then they redrew it. He went up again and re-election, kind of a hard thing to do, won District 1. And that's where he currently serves us. I count him as a friend. I've gotten to know him through his service in Congress. And I count him as a friend. I count him as one of great deep convictions and faith, and I think is important for a politician that represents us. And he's a staunch and true conservative. And like I said, I don't think he's just my rep. I think he's also my friend, and I value that. And so I'll heartily ask you to give a warm welcome to Barry Moore.
Well, thanks, Jed. I appreciate that. And any excuse I've got to be home, I'll take it. I think we were doing the math. My team between DC, I'm the football guys, and DC, they run with me. When they get in Alabama, they run with me. And I just say, y'all don't fumble at any given time, and we'll be okay. But good to be home. We're obviously in a tight boat in DC. The speaker let us know yesterday we have a one-vote majority as it stands in Washington, DC. And so for the Republican Party, that's a battle, and we'll lose one or two pretty regularly. And I think probably one of the most astounding things, and you'll see this on April 15th, was the big beautiful bill. We first went back to DC and started working on that last year. Mike Johnson told me, he said, Barry, we got 61 no votes in our report. And I said, Mike, there is no way we get that done. I just don't see how in the world we're going to get 61, because Republicans are free thinkers, and we're really more diverse. An Alabama Republican's a lot different than a California Republican. Those guys may be in a district that Trump won by 1 point. We may be in a district that Trump won by 16. And so very often trying to figure out how you get what you need to get the votes you've got to have to get that bill across the finish line is difficult. And so Mike told me that, and I thought, well, we'll see, Mike. And so sure enough, the president signed it on July 4th, and we were at the White House that night, and Speaker Johnson walked up to me. He was my roommate for a little while, and I hugged his neck. I said, I can tell you, buddy, I said, that was a God thing. There's no way in the world. I thought we would get 61 of our free-thinking guys all to agree on legislation that would really impact the largest tax cut in American history. And on April 15th, people are going to see it. If you're a married couple with 2 children making less than $74,000 a year, you're going to pay no federal income tax. In addition to that, there's no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security. For Alabama, in the auto industry, if you got interest on a car loan, that's now tax-free. And so I was talking to Tom McClintock from California, and he was there, I guess, when the Reagan tax cuts hit. And he said, when that hit on April 15th, that changed the dynamic of the electorate in the country, and they came back to the Republican Party in a way that we hadn't seen. And I think what we were able to do in getting the big, beautiful bill, I think what you guys are going to see is some impressive tax breaks for working Americans in this country, the largest tax cut in the history of the nation. And in addition to that, we funded the Golden Dome, $150 billion. And so, and one of the things, too, that we know in rural Alabama is rural hospital infrastructure. And so each rural hospital in Alabama is going to get $9.2 million as a result of that bill. Now, that's just a Band-Aid. We've got to fix that hospital system. We've got to make sure the reimbursements are there because they're struggling. But just so you know, those are things that I think are going to hit on April 15th. We're going to start to see. But when you're in that tight majority, you just have to work pretty hard to get things done. And so we're in a process, folks. For 30 years in Washington, D.C., Congress has not passed an appropriations. 12 appropriations bills that actually went through committee of jurisdiction, bipartisan support, get them to the floor of the House, get them passed out of the House, over to the Senate and passed. We've got 11 of 12 done. So y'all remember those CRs we did, those continuing resolutions just to keep spending at levels we've been spending at for 30 years now. We literally have 11 of the 12 done. We'd had DHS done it if Somalia fraud hadn't been uncovered in Minnesota. But when we started going out there and uncovering that fraud, the Democrats wanted to punish DHS. And so we're in the process, we're in the short. I thought we'd have it done by March 1, what's the day, March 2. So we're not on time and on target on that, but I think we'll get there. So we're doing some things in D.C. that I think are going to impact the American people. If you look at inflation, President Trump mentioned this in the State of the Union. 1.7% for the last 3 months of last year. We saw it at 9% at times under Joe Biden. So inflation was the problem. And so everybody's talking about, the Democrats love to talk about affordability, right? But for 4 years, we spent like drunk sailors. And I tell everybody that's an insult to drunk sailors. We were literally the only body in America that creates inflation is Washington, D.C., because we print the dollars to pay the bills. And so what happens is when working people are out here, and you're earning whatever you're earning per hour, we're printing much faster than you work. And so the velocity of that capital, that printed dollar in D.C. competes against your working dollar. And so when you go to the gas pump, when you go to the grocery store, when you go buy anything, inflation is a factor. And so we brought that down under President Trump, and we're getting to a spot that I think, hopefully between the tax cuts, we're seeing inflation come down. we'll see that the American people go, hey, you know what? These guys really do put us first. And so it's, Scott DeSant met with us. Well, he didn't meet with us. He may have come by and saw us. I don't know. We get a lot of meetings in the RSC, but he mentioned the other day, if we could get our spending down to 3% of the GDP, we'll balance the federal budget. We were at 6.2%. In the big beautiful bill, we dropped it to 5.9%. We cut 1.5 trillion in spending. And we did away with USAID, guys. That USAID, 2 years ago, when it wasn't popular, when we didn't know what was going on, I was one of 17 guys on the board that said we needed to defund USAID because that money was going offshore. I had in my gut that it was coming back to our politicians. Couldn't prove it. And originally, USAID was used for secret operations, covert operations. That's what it was set up for originally in our federal government. But then they figured out a way to set up NGOs, move money offshore, and pay those NGOs, and then funnel the money. Soros had the NGO set up, and he was using that money in political races to elect radical attorney generals and DAs around the country that just no cash for bail, kind of turning people loose. The Lake and Riley thing. I mean, there was literally a law enforcement officer that arrested the assailant in New York, and they turned the guy loose, and he went to Georgia and murdered Lake and Riley. And so those are the kind of things where the money was being funneled offshore. As we bring down repression on spending, get the inflation under control, I think you'll see some things that the American people are going to appreciate. And I was telling somebody asked me earlier, they're worried about the midterms, and Speaker Johnson told us in January this year they polled at Quinnipiac, and they're not typically a friendly crowd to the Republicans, if you will. And they said we were 66 points ahead with our base than where the Democrats are, and that's the biggest spread we've ever seen. So I think there's an opportunity in the midterms to win some of these races around the country and keep that majority. Now, it's going to, a lot of the redistricting is going to come into play because y'all see a lot of these blue states. Maine, I think they're 40% Republican and have zero representation in Washington, D.C. It's all Democrats. California's doing that right now. I think Indiana passed on a chance they had to fix it. So it's disappointing, but we hope that we can hold the majority and continue because come November 26th, we got 2 years for President Trump to achieve the American First agenda, to get that across the finish line. And so in order to get that done, we need that majority. Because I sat on the Judiciary Committee. Jamie Raskins is the ranking member on the Democratic side. He already had the articles of impeachment drafted this last election. So day one, if the Democrats would have took the House, they would have impeached Donald Trump. And so they're going to try to obstruct him every step of the way. So it's important to let your people know to vote, get out and vote, and especially around the country where I think our party's pretty pleased with what we're doing, but we just got to make sure we mobilize our voters. And so from a federal level, that's where the things are. And I'll take some questions a little bit. We'll talk about some things. If they're hard questions, I'll make Alex answer them. By the way, let me recognize my team. Alex Reynolds, Shannon Smith, and Landon Constable they're part of my Dothan office. And I want to brag on our team a little bit. I've been in Washington, D.C. for 5 years. My freshman year, we were named the #1 workplace environment out of all Republican offices in Washington, D.C. They only gave 8 awards, folks. We came second in the nation on accessibility and transparency. So we went first in one category and second in another category. And that accessibility and transparency is at 8,000 cases now, Shannon. How many cases?
I'm going to say 7,908.
7,908 cases we resolved in 5 years for veterans, small business owners, even passport issues. I did an interview this morning. That's one of the questions. They closed the passport office down here at the library. But if y'all have an issue, come see us. We're going to take care of it. I think I tell folks we can do the work in D.C., but if we forget about the people who sent us there, then it's really, to me, it's useless, right? I mean, people go to D.C. and forget who you are very often. But for us, we've been making sure that we're taking care of our people. And so if y'all need something, I was literally in Annie's pool hall. Not pool hall anymore, y'all. It's a restaurant. But I was in Annie's. It was pool hall when I was growing up delivering furniture on Main Street. But I was in Annie's. I don't know. It's been 2 years ago, maybe. My wife, Heather, and I are sitting there eating dinner, and this old guy wanders over to my table. And he goes, "Hey, Barry." And I said, "Yes, sir." I recognized him, but I wasn't sure exactly who he was. He said, "I've been waiting on my hearing aid since the war." I said, "What war?" He said, "The Vietnam War." He said, "I called your office, and in 2 weeks they were delivered." And that's the that happens to me all the time when I'm traveling South Alabama. And that's the kind of work that our team does. And so we're doing the work in D.C. And Jed hit on it. I'm a member of the House Freedom Caucus. Now, sometimes people go, "Oh, those guys are too conservative." You know, they're too conservative. Not for Alabama. I got the highest liberty score in the state of Alabama at a 97. I got a 100% pro-life voting record in Washington, D.C. And so very often people will run and say, "Well, they're conservative." But for us, being in the House Freedom Caucus, I can honestly say Jim Jordan and those guys, Mark Meadows, they kind of took me under their wing. And that's the only place I go in DC I don't feel like I need a shower some days. Now, we get in that room and we have some heated debates. And sometimes they beat a horse till it's good. And after 2 hours, I'll be like, I'll see y'all later. I'm going to the house. But that group of people really, really do. They're in it for the right reasons. And so, but I will say this. I was sitting in HFC. Well, I never say much in there. I just usually listen. Let them talk till they're blue in the face and fuss and fight, whatever we're going to do behind closed doors. Well, we were looking, farmers are in trouble. They're in trouble in this country. Lost 150,000. I grew up on a farm in 1980. The drought and army worms put us out. I'm an ag science guy. We're sitting in House Freedom Caucus, and man, the farmers are in trouble. And I looked at those guys. I said, let me tell y'all something. I said, people cry wolf all the time. I said, the wolf's at the door on these guys. I mean, they're in a tough spot. And it was our fault for printing money in D.C. because fertilizer was going up, we had fuel up, labor was up, maintenance equipment, everything was going through the roof. And these guys are on fixed income, basically, commodity prices. And so I looked down and I said, look, guys, I said, I can tell y'all this. I said, we need to do a supplemental at the end of the year for our producers. Because the bankers are looking at us, the lenders are looking at us going, we're on a limb with these guys. We've been lending money. They're struggling. They're having a tough time. And if we don't figure out a way to fix that, then they're in trouble. And I was able to get most of our HFCE guys to vote for a spending bill that they normally would have never voted for. So they will come around sometime. But still, you need those people around you in DC because Paul knows, I mean, in Montgomery, you get the lobbyists and you get the special interest groups. And some of those are good groups. I mean, there's probably a lot of special interest groups, if you want to call them. But you need people around you that can help you fight that battle without getting sucked into that system. And so we've been really, really fortunate to be a part of a great group of people in Washington, D.C. And Heather travels with me. Now, when we work in the campaign like we are right now, she doesn't come to D.C. with me as much, but we're usually together. We're a team. And honestly, Jed, she probably should have ran for office. I tell her about it all the time. She'll go speak when I can't make it. And I'll be like, don't come back, Barry. Just sit there. I'll be like, that's fair enough. Fair enough. And so, anyway, so we developed some good relationships. And that matters, guys. When you're trying, I literally got a bill signed into law by Joe Biden. Now, I tell everybody, I don't know if Joe signed it or the other man signed it. I did not go to the White House. But for veterans. And that was a bipartisan bill. And it was for veterans. So it was a big deal. And so you have to be able to work across the aisles. I got a bill right now. I had 35 Democrats this cycle voted for it. That says if you're here, you're driving drunk and you're here illegally, you're out. You're gone. Now, I would have thought that would have been common sense. We would have thought, right? You catch a guy drinking and driving or a girl, whatever it is, they're here illegally, that you take them out of the country. Well, I had judges start calling me and say, Barry, we literally have them come to our court. It's cut and dried. If you were an American citizen, you're going to jail. Something's going to happen to you. We would release them to ICE under the Biden administration. They'd drive down the road and turn them loose. And we had one young girl, she was 5 years old in Florida, was killed by a drunk driver who had been arrested 5 times, but he was here illegally. They were just turning them back out on the street. So we got 35 Dems involved in this. And so we're making the moves, and then we've got some friends across the aisle. We've been able to do some things. And look, y'all, it's tough because we want to put downward pressure on spending. I get that. But as a conservative, national defense, public safety, and infrastructure are good investments. So your money and mine. And so very often I'll work on grants. We sign a lot of letters for grants and Congress. They used to call them earmarks, y'all, but just between us, they call them CDSs, Congressional Designated Spending now. And so it's got a different term, but it's the money sometimes that our communities need. And we have to bring back to the community. But I tell the mayor, and the mayor knows this too, all the time, don't call me if you want a walking trail or a ball field. I'm probably going to get it. You need to raise that money locally. But if it's an investment in infrastructure or sewer or public safety or national defense that makes sense for your community where that money turns over, then we're going to make sure we make those investments in our communities. And so it's been I had to transition a little when I first got there and understand that process because if I got a walking trail, Nancy Pelosi got 20 of them, so it's kind of, you had to be able to navigate that and work through that process. But we made some pretty substantial investments and we're excited about, look, SpaceCom's coming to Alabama, guys, that was huge. That was huge. President Trump came up with that Space Force thing. He wanted it. He got it pretty well set in place, and then 2020 happened. And Joe Biden decided to move it to Colorado, not because Colorado was even in the top 3. They were the 5th state on the evaluation process, but they were the first Democrat state. And so he wanted to move all the Space Command out to Colorado. And so, to Mike Rogers' credit, who's chairman of House, And the Alabama delegation, to the point that even Shamari Figures and Terry Sewell, as they could, helped us in that fight. We did not let them break ground in Colorado. They rented buildings. We did not let them make any financial investments in that. So when President Trump came back in, we were able to bring that to Alabama because we won both times in the process. It should have never even, Colorado should not have been considered. And so we're starting to see those investments pay off, and certainly workforce development is huge. We got to work on that. Land, labor, and climate. Alabama's got land, labor, and climate conducive to growing economy. When I was in the state legislature, Paul runs this too. We brought also Airbus, Polaris, Remington, Kimball Farms. All those companies came to Alabama. And as Trump talks about the golden age of America, there's an opportunity for a golden age in Alabama. And we've got relationships with him. So that if the delegation, he loves Alabama, and he loves a lot of us in the delegation. So when we need something, I can call him and he takes my calls. And I don't always take his calls, but he takes mine. I got to tell you a story. So I've been on the road. I was telling these guys earlier. I flew in from DC on a Thursday, qualified on a Friday, and I went to Huntsville, Alabama the next morning at 7 a.m. So we had our Alabama kids in there that were working with us, and so Thursday night I stayed up way past my bedtime, took the day of a bus, went to Huntsville, Alabama. Saturday morning spoke at 7 back to Shelby County at noon, spoke, and I was home. I'm tired, I'm old, right? And so I go to bed about 9 o'clock, but because I was speaking, I turned my phone on. So I'm dead asleep. I hear Heather yell, come running through the house. She jumps on the bed. She hits me on the chest and says, "Wake up, the president's calling." You know what I mean? I'm dead asleep. So Rick, I'll get her and go, "How do you know the president's calling?" She said, "Just answer your phone. The president's calling." And so I picked it up. And he said, "Barry, I'm with you." You know how he'll do. He's New Yorkers. He talks funny sometimes. But he's like, "We're with you. This is great. You're going to be great." And she said, "We just can't let him know we sleep," because he never sleeps. And so he literally called. I said, "I take the presidents most of the time." My sister said, "We're going to set your phone from now on when the president calls it ring, regardless of your funeral or wedding, whatever it is." So if it goes ringing, y'all know POTUS is calling, because that's the only person that said like that. But anyway, so just being in the process and having the relationships with the president, I've been with him a long, long time. He knows it. So when I call him, he takes my calls. And that's so important in DC. The relationships that you build, I've been there 5 years, the relationships on those committees across the aisle and even across into the Senate, the people that we work with to get something done. No one person can do that. You need a team for that. And so we've been very fortunate. We've been successful. And it's credit a lot to our team, credit a lot to just, I think, just having a service heart. I try to hire people with service hearts. And so we're honored and blessed to do this job. And I'll tell you one more quick story. And then we got time for I love to tell stories. So they're more fun than speeches. And so I've never heard a politician speak. Oh, gosh, I wish I could talk 5 minutes longer. So I was in Walmart. It's probably been 2 years ago. And I'm kind of walking through Walmart, and I see my third grade teacher. You remember Ms. Rollins, Rick? Yeah. I see Ms. Rollins over here. She's on the aisle there in Walmart. And I'm like, what is this? I got to go say hey to her. Ms. Linda, you appreciate this. And so I walk over and I say, "Hey, Ms. Rollins, how you doing?" She said, "Well, hey, baby, how you doing?" And she reached out to hug my neck and said, naturally, that's my third grade teacher. I'm on her neck. I lean into her. She goes, "Hey, Barry," she says, "I am so proud of you." And I thought to myself, well, we all want our third grade teacher to be proud of us, right? And so I'm thinking, man, this is a great day. My third grade teacher is proud of me. And I stepped back and I said, "Well, Ms. Rollins, I got to tell you, I never dreamed I'd be in Congress." Y'all, she looked me straight in the eyes and said, "Baby, I didn't either." You just never know what the Lord's going to call you to do, right? I mean, He has called us into this fight for such a time as this. When you look at what the president has done, I remember this year at committee, I had Christopher Wray, Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, Durham, we got the reports. All the stuff that they have done to President Trump, astonishing. He spent $76 million in his own money on legal. He was impeached twice. 96 indictments. 91 days before the midterms, they raided that man's home. And he is in it for the right reasons. He loves his country. Anybody else would have walked away. I mean, he had properties all around the globe that he goes to. Why stay in this country where they're trying to they tried to kill him twice. Think about it. And so to have somebody like that that's willing to step up at this time in our nation, it's so vitally important that we pray for him and we support him. And so we're certainly honored to be in the fight. I had no idea I endorsed President Trump in August 21st, 2015. Mr. John Watson, you were down there, weren't you? Glad people was at that. He was coming to Alabama. It was his first day. And he didn't have a chance, guys. Nobody conventionally listened thought that man could win. None of us thought he could really win. And so it's August 21st, 2015. He come down the Golden Escalator. His first day in Pennsylvania, people stayed. And it started, they were going to be a little building like at the Civic Center somewhere over there, and it's like, it's going to be 500 people. Well, as the day went on and time went on, they're like, sir, we're going to have to move this thing to the stadium. There's so many people in Alabama that we don't want to sit and want to be there for you. So when we pulled up, there were people lined up outside the stadium. And the weather, it wasn't a good weather day, not like today. And so I was kind of scratching my head, and we pull in down there. About 30,000 people from Alabama and Mississippi come over to see this guy, Donald Trump. And so Heather and I were in RV on the south end of Live People's Stadium. Joe Freeman knocked on the door with Trump, Alabama, and said, would any of you guys be willing to endorse Donald Trump? Heather and I was like, well, that's above our pay grade. Y'all, keep in mind, there were 17 in the Republican primary. He was an outsider. Less than 1% chance that he would get the nomination. And conventionalism was he could not beat Hillary Clinton, right? Nobody saw that coming. And so when Joe knocked on the door and said, y'all want to endorse Donald Trump, we were kind of like, we better pray about this. Sometimes, Jiggy, the wisdom comes from on high. It wasn't anything we knew. And so we got this piece about endorsing this guy from New York City, and it didn't make any sense. And so we go out of the bus, and we're headed towards the tunnel. And a friend of mine, there were only 4 elected officials in the state of Alabama that would endorse Donald Trump that day. Listen, we had Rubio coming from Florida. We had Walker coming from Wisconsin. All those guys are on the endorsements of city, state legislators. And so we get a piece about endorsing this guy from New York. We're going through the tunnel, the 4 of us, and my buddy Ed goes, hey, man, you want to go first or you want to go last? I said, Ed, I guess I'll go first. So I became the first elected official in the nation to endorse a guy from New York City who had no chance of winning, but we felt that's what we needed to be in the fight. It's 11 years ago. And I'll never forget, we were going, y'all got to kick out of this. I'm a 1984 graduate across high school. And the album was 1984 by Van Halen. And the song was Jump. Y'all know that song. And as Jump was playing, 30,000 people were screaming Trump. And I'm like, this is a whole different level. This is different than anything we've ever seen as a political rally. And so we go up, and first guy in the nation to endorse him, like I said, he didn't have a chance. I left the stage, and that rascal got up there and said 3 cuss words. And I thought, oh my God, we are so dead. All my Baptists were mad at me, my Methodists, my Catholics, everybody was mad at us because Trump's went to the door and dropped a bomb on the stage at his first rally. But he was God's man for this time. And he's done so much for this country. And he's been targeted by so many people. The most astonishing thing to me was the Durham report. We had John Durham in Judiciary Committee, and I said, Mr. Durham, you said in your report you found some things that were quite concerning. And Durham's he's a law enforcement guy. He's a lifetime law enforcement guy. I said, what do you mean? Some things were concerning to you. And he said, well, there was a briefing in the White House. And he said it was Barack Obama, President of the United States, Vice President of the United States, Joe Biden, Loretta Lynch was the Attorney General, and Comey, the Director of the FBI, were in the Oval Office. Clapper walks in, CIA, DNI guys, and goes, hey, just so y'all know, there's this Russian collusion there that Hillary Clinton's running through the DNC, and it's not real. They knew this a long time ago. Comey, the FBI director, leaves that office, and within 48 hours, he taps General Flynn's phones. And Crossfire Hurricane began to bang. So they literally cooked up a prosecution on Russian collusion against the man that we elected as the President of the United States to destroy him. And so all the time you saw all those people talking about Russian collusion, the Democratic leaders, the left, the media, everybody knew, the people in the know, that it was false. It was a fake narrative. But they will do anything to stop him at any price. And so we as a nation, we need to stand up and make sure we support that. I'm happy to take a couple of questions. I'm sure there's probably a few. If there's not, I got a good story. Yes, ma'am, Ms. Linda.
Tell us how your Senate race goes.
Senate race, that's a good question. It's going really well. I told y'all about Trump calling me that night. That was the night he endorsed me. President Trump endorsed me on January 17th. We had led in fundraising in the third and fourth quarter of last year. As a conservative, that has never happened to me. But I've been able to build relationships in Washington, D.C. Steve Daines was head of the NSRC. He won 6 Senate races for us last cycle. Daines came on with me early on board. And that kept the D.C. establishment out of that race. Because like, Daines is a good guy. He thinks Barry's an honest broker. And we can use him in the Senate. And we're going to be with him. And so Trump's endorsement, obviously, J.D. Vance endorsed me 2 weeks ago. Turning Point's endorsement's coming. We're leading the fundraising. And on an informed ballot right now, if with the informed ballot knowing that Donald Trump supporting Barry Moore, we're at 34 to 17. We want to get to 51% by May 19th and win it without a runoff. Because if we win it without a runoff, Ms. Linda, then this Alabama senator-elect can go to other states and have some of those other senators from other states that need our help so that when we get to Washington, D.C., we can get things done for our state and we'll have relationships built. So we're hearing great things. We're up in the polls, and it has been amazing to me to watch this thing take off like it has. It's just people are coming to help us. And so I ran in enemy territory many times in my life. As I travel the state, I don't feel that. There's no pushback on us. They're like, hey, he's a House Freedom, he's a conservative, he's a Trump guy, he's our guy. So that's kind of what we're seeing. But thanks, that's a good question. Yes, sir.
Hey, thanks for being here, first off. If Congressman Moore becomes Senator Moore, what are your top 2 or 3 issues for the Wiregrass?
So I think obviously we got to protect Fort Rucker, guys. I mean, that is a huge economic engine for us. And so obviously there's some unmanned aircraft issues, Troy, we need to address. And so we want to make sure with Katie Brett and myself that we're in that conversation, that we make sure that we have Fort Rucker protected and that we continue to be the center of rotor wing training for the military. And certainly that's part of the process. And I think, too, we've got to invest in infrastructure. We got to see how that looks. Obviously, we got a bridge over the western part of the state. But I-10 comes all the way across the southern part of the country. But whatever we can do to make sure we continue to invest in, and to me, it's infrastructure investment down here. Obviously, airports will help. We just put some money. I think Brandon, and we put $300,000 into sheriff's department for things they need, radios, cars. So public safety, Troy. Obviously, national security issues and transportation, sewer. I mean, I got Samson a $1.8 million grant this time, or a CDS earmark, I should say, not say grant. Alice is going, not a grant, sir. A CDS, because of a water well system. So what we need to do is make sure we invest in infrastructure that grows our economy. And I'll tell you this, there's no government program like the job. And so if I can get you out of that safety net program, or that became a spider web, and get you into a high-paying job, and we got to look at transitioning people out of welfare, because the problem is some of these moms go to work and they take a huge pay cut. Like literally, they go from, if they start making so much money, they lose all their assistance. So there's so many things we got to do. And obviously, agriculture is huge. Second congressional district before they redrew it, Troy was the second largest peanut producing district in the nation. So as we fight for our farmers, invest in infrastructure, and protect Fort Rucker, that's the 3 things I think we have. Yes, sir. All right.
Barry, it's more of a comment than a follow-up to the question. I want to thank you so much for your stand on real law. And I know a lot of Alabamians, I see that threat through Alabama, but it is a national threat, I think.
Artists, absolutely. If you go right now, guys, I've been told, and I don't know this to be fact, but you cannot get 30-year money in London and Paris. Because what happens is those open borders and those Islam, that it's actually a cancer that devours things. And so I was in Dallas, Texas a few weeks ago, meeting out there. And outside of Dallas, and I met with Jewish leaders, Hindu leaders, and Christian leaders. And outside of Dallas, those Muslim communities, those mosques they're building, in those neighborhoods, if you're non-Muslim, you pay 3 times the HOAs that a Muslim does. So they're vetting their communities, forcing anybody out that won't vote for Muslim leaders. And so we actually have areas that in this country now that if our law enforcement goes to, they're like, we don't recognize your law. We only recognize Sharia law. And so I think that we have to make sure that we understand. Somebody asked me a few weeks ago, I was on a panel, what is the 5-year fear that you see in the nation? And to me, it's the radical Islam, the Muslim, that religion. There's 57 Muslim countries yet. Barack Obama started and moved all those Somalians into Minneapolis, and we see how that's working out. And so we have to understand it's going to be a tough conversation. But me and Coach, and there's 16 or 17 plus, more than that, there's probably 20 of us, on the Sharia-free caucus in Washington, D.C. to stop Sharia law in America. We have one law, it's the Constitution of the United States. That is a law we will abide by. If you do not want to abide by our laws, then you need to leave this country. How much time we got? I'll tell y'all a funny story.
You got 10. You got to take 10 more.
He's like, please, let me see how much time I got. Okay.
You got plenty of time.
Okay, I'm gonna tell this 5 minutes. Yes, sir. Let me get this question and I'll tell my quick story. I'll get kicked out.
What are the chances of getting the money back from all the fraud in Minnesota?
The money from the fraud Minnesota, and what are the chances of getting that back? I don't know. You know, suitcases of cash left this country. Now we're working right now. The Senate, or I think it was the Senate said a few weeks ago, if you're on public assistance, you cannot wire money out of this country. So we're starting to shut it down. But that money's probably gone. That's my concern. And they raided a place the other day and found a bunch of cash in the sheetrock walls. If we find that kind of money, we get it back. But right now, I think just shutting the pipeline off and making sure in the future our kids and grandkids are not straddle that kind of debt, and stop these open border policies. We're bringing people in this country that are here to get on government assistance and never want to contribute to the economy. We don't need that. You know, our kids and grandkids need protection. We need to make sure. Y'all, the interest on the debt is $105,000 a second, $37 trillion. We're paying $105,000 a second in interest on that debt. The interest is about our spending on national defense. $1 trillion a year, that's about all we spend on national defense. So the fraud, the NGOs, the USAIDs, they're printing the money and those sort of things, and the wasteful spending in some of these programs, we've got to get a handle on. Because we really don't need all that. We wouldn't need nearly as much money to run DC if we ran it efficiently and quit letting people steal money. Waste, fraud, and abuse of census, it's probably $1 trillion. He thinks that's what we lost in waste, fraud, and abuse. So it's hard to believe that. Anyway, I'll tell you a quick story, then I'll shut up. So Jim Jordan, Holly Jordan, Heather and I were at dinner. It's been probably, I don't know, it's been, I lose track of time. It's been maybe last year. And we're at dinner, and he said, Barry, I got to tell you the story. And I said, what about it, Jim? Tell me. He said, do you remember when they arrested Trump in New York City? And I said, yeah, Jim, I remember that. I said, me and you went and had a hearing. The Judiciary Committee, we went to Alvin Bragg's district and actually had a hearing. He said, well, that was a federal crime, so they couldn't release his mugshot. But when Fannie Willis arrested him in Georgia, that was a state crime. And so the media, all the world was waiting for Trump's mugshot with bated breath. And so Trump's mugshot goes out. And Jim said, I wanted to call the president and say, sir, we are sorry this is happening to you. We thought this has got to be the worst day of your life. Your family's being humiliated. You're being called a felon by every media outlet in the country. And it's got to be the worst day ever. And so Jim says, I decided, well, I'll just wait. And I'll call him around midnight. And I'll just leave him a voicemail and say, Mr. President, we're praying for you. We got your back on this. And we're sorry you and your family are having to suffer through this abuse. So Jim says he waits till midnight. Calls President Trump. Gonna leave him a voicemail. Second ring. Jim, wasn't that the greatest mugshot in the history of mugshots? You can't beat a guy like that. So y'all keep us in your prayers and God bless.
Next week's program will be both Police Chief Will Benny. I'd like to thank everyone who attended today, all the guests, everyone who helped put this program together. Will, please stand. We'll get some forward to us. Say it to
Fair officer, will live with the will on earth. Will be beneficial.
Look forward to seeing everyone next Monday.